facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear.
That Ventura had a choice and that she chose to participate in those sexual encounters.
Where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed.
Specifically about the drug use.
She is clearly excited about freak off.
Did you catch what unfolded today in the Diddy trial? The music mogul totally lost his composure in court when prosecutors unveiled text messages exchanged between him and his ex, Cassie Ventura. These weren't ordinary texts. They included proof that directly challenged months of claims Diddy has been standing by. The judge had to step in to restore order as Diddy's lawyers rushed to manage the fallout. And that was only the start of day 4.
Ventura on the witness stand for a 4th day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross. I'm always ready to freak off, one message said.
She was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009. I'm always ready to freak off. There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
The prosecution had a clear strategy in holding back those explosive text messages until day 4 of the trial. They meticulously laid the groundwork with witness testimonies and other evidence, setting the stage before dropping this game-changing revelation. The timing was deliberate. They wanted the jury to fully grasp the complexity of Diddy and Cassie's relationship before exposing the unvarnished reality captured in those messages. The texts covered a span of 3 years, from 2016 to 2019, and were presented in chronological order. At first, the messages seemed relatively harmless, but as the timeline moved into 2017, the tone shifted dramatically. The courtroom was stunned by a series of late-night texts from July 2018, sent mere hours after the couple had appeared publicly affectionate at a major event. One message from Diddy read, "You think you can just walk away. Nobody walks away from me. I made you. I can break you just as fast." The timestamp showed 2:43 a.m., right after a high-profile awards show. Cassie's reply came quickly. "Please. Stop threatening me. I'm scared of what you'll do." His response was chillingly immediate. "You should be." The courtroom literally gasped at the sight of this exchange, and one juror visibly flinched. The prosecution zeroed in on this exchange, emphasizing how it shattered Diddy's public persona as a caring, devoted partner, revealing a far darker side behind closed doors. Another batch of texts from March 2019 displayed even more controlling behavior. Diddy questioned Cassie, "Who were you talking to at the party? I saw you smiling at him." When Cassie explained it was just a professional photographer, Diddy fired back, "Don't lie to me. I have people watching you everywhere. There's nowhere you can go that I won't know about." What resonated deeply with the jury was how these private conversations aligned precisely with public events. Just 2 days after a widely circulated interview where Diddy called Cassie the love of my life, he sent her a text stating, "This arrangement works because you do what I say. Don't forget that." The prosecution meticulously tied each message to specific incidents from Cassie's testimony, highlighting a troubling pattern. Threats followed by apologies, then gifts, then escalating control. Repeated phrases like, "You belong to me and nobody will believe you," were brought to light as evidence of manipulation and intimidation. Perhaps the most damning was a message from September 2018, where Diddy admitted, "I'm sorry about last night. I lost control. It won't happen again." This text came a day after an incident Cassie described where she alleged physical assault. The final text shown revealed Diddy trying to silence Cassie after their breakup. "Remember our agreement. Your silence has been paid for. Break it, and there will be consequences." This message was sent just weeks before Diddy publicly framed their split as amicable and respectful. These private words painted a portrait completely at odds with Diddy's. carefully maintained public image. A man who respected women and upheld positive relationships with his exes. As the last message disappeared from the screen, the stark contrast between the polished facade and the raw, unfiltered reality could not have been clearer. Diddy's own words had unraveled the narrative he had been fiercely defending for months.
Ventura's attorney is optimistic outside of court.
Doing great. I said she was ready, and I think she's demonstrating that. The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear as the case goes on and Cassie's testimony goes on, and we'll see what the jury does.
And finally, we'll talk about Justin Bieber because he is finally addressing the Diddy stuff. There's been long speculation that somehow he's involved.
Surprised it took so long to address.
Well, he's clearing that up now. And also we'll talk about how people are scared for Justin Bieber because they think he's in a cult. They have to have it.
By the end of today, Cassie will be done. So they have all day today to ask her whatever they want to ask her.
Because obviously she's about to pop. And that's like...
Which is totally understandable.
So if she did pop, if she did give birth, let's say, she can't give testimony
anymore. No, she's giving testimony today.
I know. I was saying, what if...
Oh, like she gave birth and then
that's why. That's the
delayed.
reason. If she wasn't pregnant, I don't think the judge would have said you have to finish by today.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Obviously. That's the whole, that's the whole crux of the argument.
Obviously.
Yeah.
You didn't explicitly, spell it out.
But Diddy's team is also pissed off because they're like, we want as much time as we can have.
Her voice is low at times. The defense did tell her if it's too much, I can read them. But there were many times early on this morning where she read some of those explicit details where she is clearly excited about a freak off and talks about entertaining other people in the bedroom.
And what has Diddy's demeanor been in this cross-examination as well?
There was a moment where Sean Combs was nodding in agreement when they brought up a message that he sent her where he said, one of my for me. Now, what's interesting here is that does match what she told prosecutors or what she's been telling the jury all along, which is she did this and she said, but she really wanted to spend time with him after the fact. So he was shaking his head at this message where he's almost, I guess, agreeing that he did say, without him saying it, he enjoyed having the freak offs and then having sex with her after the fact. And her saying, I agree with you. I love having sex with you after.
Since Cassie filed her lawsuit, Diddy has stuck to the same script, denying all allegations, portraying their relationship as loving, and insisting their breakup was mutual and respectful. But these newly revealed text messages completely dismantled that story. Just 3 months ago, Diddy appeared on Entertainment Tonight, looking straight into the camera, declaring, I have never and would never raise my hand to a woman. That's not how I was raised. He even got emotional, speaking about how much he still respected Cassie as an important part of his life. Remember when he posted that lengthy Instagram statement, calling her accusations completely false, and labeling them as a desperate bid for money? Or that press conference where his team insisted that Diddy and Cassie maintained a healthy, respectful relationship both personally and professionally. They even went as far as releasing old photos of happy times between them, trying to suggest that Cassie's claims were fabricated. But the text messages revealed a far darker truth. While Diddy publicly painted a picture of respect and partnership, privately he was sending Cassie threatening texts. As he wished her well in public, his messages were controlling her every move, behind the scenes. The contradiction was glaring. The prosecution emphasized this by creating a powerful timeline displayed on a large board, with Diddy's public statements on one side and his private messages on the other, sometimes sent on the very same day. One column showed him in interviews speaking about mutual respect. The opposite column revealed texts like, "Nobody will believe you anyway." Legal experts following the trial were taken aback by the strategy. This level of direct contradiction utterly destroys credibility, said one analyst outside the courthouse. It's not just the damaging content of the texts, it's that they expose a completely different version of the man he's portrayed himself to be. The turning point appeared to be Diddy's repeated denials of ever being physically abusive. In a statement from January, he said, "I have never engaged in any form of physical abuse toward anyone." Yet, one of the texts explicitly referenced an incident from the night before, where he apologized for losing control, an incident Cassie had already testified about. His public narrative of a respectful, mutual breakup rang hollow beside texts, threatening consequences if Cassie spoke out. The polished image of a respectful ex-partner crumbled under the weight of messages reminding her that her silence was bought and that he had the power to make or break her. Perhaps the most damaging revelation was how these messages starkly contradicted his claims of supporting Cassie's career and independence. Instead, the private text showed constant surveillance, questioning who she spoke to, monitoring her every move, and issuing chilling reminders of his control. Throughout the courtroom drama, Cassie remained composed, her gaze fixed straight ahead, never once looking at Diddy, even when his outburst interrupted the proceedings. Each time a contradiction emerged between his public statements and private messages, her attorney offered a gentle touch of reassurance on her arm. Her calm presence added an undeniable weight to the prosecution's case, reinforcing the gravity of these revelations.
The other things that the Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So...
she is out of the freak-offs then. She is... when she's with Kid Cudi, or allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-offs if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, she still loves Diddy.
Relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, Kim Porter. Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter.
Right.
Trying to show that, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, this was a real relationship.
It was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere, dude.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right. Final story of the week. Wow. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few rumors flying around, was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of...
I think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way or the other.
Even if you're at a white party, just having a lot of fun, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be linked in any way.
No, and that's why, all those people... There's a few people, I think, that have come forward and been I didn't see any.
While Diddy was visibly unraveling, Cassie remained composed in the front row just behind the prosecution's table. From the moment she entered that morning, her calm was unmistakable. Dressed in a simple black pantsuit, her hair neatly pulled, back and makeup understated, she exuded quiet strength. Before the texts were unveiled, she sat calmly, consulting with her attorneys and occasionally jotting notes on a small pad, seemingly ready for another routine day in court. But everything shifted the moment the prosecution announced they were about to present the text messages. Cassie's posture straightened instantly, her shoulders tensing as the first text lit up the screen. Though her face stayed neutral, her eyes remained glued to the display. She didn't glance once at Diddy, not even during his courtroom outburst, as if she had consciously chosen to act as if he wasn't there. When the more threatening messages appeared, a courtroom reporter observed a subtle change in Cassie's breathing. She took slow, deep breaths, closing her eyes briefly at one particularly painful message. During the text where Diddy replied, "You should be," after she expressed fear, her hand trembled slightly as she reached for a glass of water. "You" could see her reliving those moments, one observer shared after the session. Her face showed that these weren't just words on a screen, but a lived reality, real fear. Her legal team stayed close and attentive throughout. The lead attorney whispered words of reassurance from time to time, gently placing a supportive hand on her arm. Another member discreetly passed her tissues as the most menacing texts flashed across the screen. Despite being mentally prepared for this moment, it was clear the experience was emotionally taxing in real time. The courtroom setup only added to the palpable tension between the two former partners. Cassie and Diddy were seated on opposite sides, separated by at least 30 feet. Court officers strategically positioned themselves, including one standing directly in the line of sight between them, a subtle but unmistakable security measure. Throughout the entire ordeal, Cassie never once looked in Diddy's direction. Even during his emotional outburst, she kept her gaze fixed forward, her face steady except for a slight clench of her jaw. This deliberate avoidance of eye contact spoke volumes about the fractured relationship. When the text warning her of consequences, if she broke their agreement, appeared, Cassie closed her eyes briefly and took a deep breath. Her attorney leaned in quietly, and after a whispered exchange, she nodded ever so slightly. This was the only moment she seemed close to breaking down, but she quickly composed herself. The big question hanging over the courtroom was whether Cassie would be called to testify specifically about these messages. Rumors had swirled that the prosecution was holding off on putting her on the stand until these texts were revealed. The tension in the room was electric. Would she have to explain those painful exchanges in her own voice? The emotional weight was so intense even the judge appeared visibly affected. After the last text disappeared from the screen, the judge called for a 20-minute recess, acknowledging the heavy emotional atmosphere. As Cassie stood to leave, she allowed herself a brief moment of vulnerability. A single tear traced down her cheek, quickly wiped away. Then, with her shoulders squared and resolve evident, she walked out alongside her legal team.
This violence captured on cameras at a Los Angeles hotel ensued. You can see Combs kicking and dragging her. But the defense said Ventura's participation in the freak-offs. The defense hoping to convince the jury Combs became violent, not to coerce Ventura into sex. But
and then I think things might have just spiraled out of control. And at the end, do I think that she wanted to do those things? No.
No, I don't think she wanted to do it at the end.
But
she
it
could
does
be more explicit about it.
True.
I wish there was a paper trail of her being more, because then he'd be cooked.
Yes, I agree with that. And yeah, so these texts don't look good because it does make it look like she was into the freak-offs.
Judge Howard Richter had maintained strict control over the courtroom from the very first day of the trial. Known for his no-nonsense demeanor, he kept both legal teams tightly in check, shutting down any grandstanding and severely limiting media presence during proceedings. He made it abundantly clear that, despite Diddy's celebrity status, his courtroom was neither a concert stage nor a press event. So when Diddy abruptly stood and tried to approach the bench, Judge Richter's response was immediate and firm. He slammed his gavel and sharply commanded, "Mr. Combs, return to your seat immediately." When Diddy persisted, the judge's tone hardened further. "Court officers, ensure the defendant remains seated. We will have order in this courtroom." Diddy's actions broke several court rules, rising without permission, attempting to approach the bench uninvited, and making intimidating gestures. Each of these could be grounds for contempt of court, which carries serious penalties including fines or jail time. Court officers acted quickly. Two moved swiftly to intercept Diddy, positioning themselves between him and the judge, while a third stationed near the gallery, visibly alert to the potential for escalation. Their rapid intervention prevented a larger disturbance. After a 15-minute recess, Judge Richter addressed the courtroom with unmistakable authority. Looking Diddy square in the eye, he warned, "Mr. Combs, let me be crystal clear. Any further disruptions like this will result in contempt of court charges. This is non-negotiable." Turning to Diddy's lead attorney, he added, "I expect you to control your client. Failure to do so will have consequences for both of you." The judge also issued an official warning to be recorded in court transcripts. The defendant's conduct shows blatant disregard for court procedures and will not be tolerated. One more outburst, and I will have no choice but to pursue contempt proceedings. What few realized was how profoundly this incident altered the judge's approach to the trial. Before Diddy's outburst, Judge Richter had maintained a relatively balanced stance, sometimes siding with the defense on objections. Afterward, he granted the prosecution considerably more leeway in presenting evidence. In an unusual move, the judge even addressed the jury directly about the episode. "You must disregard the defendant's behavior during these proceedings. Your verdict must be based solely on the evidence, not on any emotional displays you may have witnessed." This instruction was critical, as studies show jurors are often subconsciously influenced by a defendant's courtroom conduct despite explicit warnings. Legal analysts observing the trial noted that judges wield wide discretion and that Diddy's loss of control likely harmed his credibility with the court. As one expert put it, Judge Richter was already strict. Now he's watching Diddy like a hawk. With the explosive text messages now admitted into evidence and the judge visibly annoyed by Diddy's behavior, the entire direction of the trial has shifted dramatically. What began as a confident dismissal of allegations by Diddy's team has morphed into a frantic effort to contain the fallout from his own words and actions. The stakes have raised beyond simply winning or losing. Now, the pressing concern is how much more damage may unfold. What started as just another celebrity courtroom drama has morphed into a potentially career-ending spectacle. These texts reveal the real Diddy, not the charismatic music mogul, but a man who threatened and controlled his former partner behind closed doors. With Day 5 scheduled to begin tomorrow, legal insiders are speculating whether Diddy's camp might seek a settlement. Why risk more damaging information surfacing? Damage control efforts are underway, but some revelations are too severe to simply brush aside. The real question isn't whether Diddy will win this case, it's how far this will ultimately fall apart for him.
Have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand or was versus the person that's expecting, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother, and her husband, Alex Fine. I think it's difficult on both sides. I've seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages. So he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony.
And jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and the defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand.
The 4th day of the trial, involving Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura, will undoubtedly be remembered as the most intense and pivotal moment in this legal battle. What started as a relatively calm courtroom session quickly spiraled into chaos the moment the prosecution revealed a cache of private text messages exchanged between the 2 former partners. These texts exposed a side of Diddy that was starkly different from the polished public persona he has cultivated for decades. The messages, some of them deeply disturbing, shattered the narrative that Diddy had maintained, sparking an emotional outburst that rippled through the courtroom and changed the tone of the entire trial. For months, Diddy's defense team had painted a picture of a respectful relationship and an amicable breakup, denying all allegations of abuse or misconduct. Diddy himself had publicly insisted that he would never harm Cassie and that their split was conducted with mutual respect. But as the text messages were displayed one by one on the courtroom screens, it became clear to everyone present that this version of events was not just misleading, it was outright false. From veiled threats to controlling language, the texts revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior that starkly contradicted Diddy's public statements. The courtroom fell silent as one particularly chilling message appeared, sent at 2:43 a.m., shortly after a high-profile awards show where the couple had appeared happy and united. Diddy wrote, "You think you can just walk away? Nobody walks away from me. I made you. I can break you just as fast." Cassie's response, trembling yet resolute, read, "Please stop threatening me. I'm scared of what you'll do." The tension in the room was palpable as the judge had to pound the gavel multiple times to restore order after Diddy abruptly stood up, clearly agitated. This was no longer just a legal proceeding. It was a raw display of truth and consequences that neither side could ignore. The prosecution had meticulously prepared this moment for months. They understood the power of these messages, not just as evidence, but as a window into the toxic dynamics that had defined Diddy and Cassie's relationship behind closed doors. Rather than spring these texts on the court at random, they waited until the jury was familiar with the broader context, having heard testimony from witnesses and experts about the nature of controlling relationships. The revelation of these messages was a calculated move, designed to leave an indelible mark on the jury's perception of Diddy. These messages spanned a 3-year period, from 2016 to 2019, and were displayed in chronological order, revealing the evolution of Diddy's behavior. Initially, the text seemed innocent, even affectionate, but as time went on, the tone shifted dramatically. By mid-2017, subtle manipulations gave way to outright threats and possessiveness. One message from March 2019 read, "Who were you talking to at the party? I saw you smiling at him." When Cassie explained it was just a photographer she knew professionally, Diddy's reply was chilling. "Don't lie to me. I have people watching you everywhere. There's nowhere you can go that I won't know about." This level of surveillance and control was completely at odds with the loving, supportive partner Diddy publicly claimed to be. The prosecution drew clear lines connecting these texts to specific incidents Cassie had testified about, showing the jury that these messages weren't isolated threats but part of a sustained pattern of emotional abuse and intimidation. Diddy's attempts to control Cassie's social interactions and movements emerged as a central theme, revealing a relationship that was as suffocating as it was toxic. The courtroom atmosphere shifted dramatically as more texts surfaced, including one from September 2018, where Diddy apologized for losing control, a direct reference to an incident of physical violence Cassie had described in her testimony. The prosecution highlighted how this private admission stood in stark contrast to Diddy's public denials of any physical abuse. Another message showed Diddy warning Cassie against speaking out about their relationship, saying, "Remember our agreement. Your silence has been paid for. Break it, and there will be consequences." This message was especially damaging because it contradicted Diddy's public portrayal of their split as amicable and respectful. Throughout this emotional roller coaster, Cassie remained composed but visibly affected. She sat quietly in the front row, eyes fixed on the display, her face revealing the toll of reliving these moments. Her attorneys provided steady support, offering tissues and quiet reassurances as some of the most threatening messages appeared. It was clear that despite the pain these texts caused, Cassie's presence added undeniable weight to the prosecution's case, embodying the human impact behind the cold words on the screen. Diddy's outburst was the climax of the day. Frustrated and cornered by the evidence, he suddenly rose from his seat and tried to approach the judge's bench, a blatant violation of courtroom protocol. Judge Howard Richter, known for his strict demeanor and no-nonsense approach, immediately slammed his gavel and ordered Diddy back to his seat. When Diddy ignored the command, court officers swiftly intervened to prevent the situation from escalating further. The judge's subsequent warning was clear and severe. Any further disruptions would result in contempt of court charges, a move that could carry serious legal consequences. This incident did more than just disrupt the proceedings. It changed the entire dynamic of the trial. Judge Richter, who had previously maintained a fairly balanced stance, began giving the prosecution greater latitude, allowing them to present evidence more freely and aggressively. In a rare step, he also addressed the jury directly, instructing them to separate their judgment of the evidence from any emotional reactions to Diddy's courtroom behavior. Legal experts watching closely noted that such instructions are crucial because jurors often struggle to set aside their impressions of a defendant's conduct when making a decision. The mounting evidence and courtroom drama have shifted public opinion as well. Once seen primarily as a successful and charismatic music icon, Diddy now faces serious scrutiny as allegations of abusive behavior come to light. The contrast between his public image and the private messages revealed in court is stark, painting a picture of a man who used power and influence to intimidate and control. This trial has become more than a legal battle. It is a reckoning with the realities of power, control, and abuse behind the glamorous facade of celebrity. As Day 5 looms, speculation grows about whether Diddy's legal team will seek a settlement. The damage from the text messages is severe, and with the judge's clear frustration and the prosecution's strengthened position, the risks of continuing the trial are high. Yet, the question remains, can the truth revealed in these messages be undone? The impact on Diddy's career and legacy is already profound, as fans and industry insiders alike watch closely to see how this chapter will end. In the courtroom, the tension is palpable. The defense is scrambling to regroup, seeking to discredit the texts or frame them in a different light. Meanwhile, the prosecution remains confident, viewing the messages as the cornerstone of their case. The jury, caught between public spectacle and raw evidence, faces the difficult task of unraveling a complex narrative where words on a screen reveal a far darker story than what had ever been told publicly. The revelations on Day 4 of the trial have irrevocably altered the course of this case. Diddy's once unassailable image has been deeply tarnished, and the fallout will likely reverberate far beyond the courtroom walls. This trial serves as a powerful reminder that no amount of fame or fortune can shield someone from the consequences of their actions, especially when those actions are captured in their own words. As the trial continues, the world watches to see whether justice will finally be served and what this means for everyone involved.